Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. JustusRStone here, talking about volume number 1 of Kugane Maruyama's light novel series, Overlord. Now right off the bat, this one is along the lines of the genre of a gamers stuck in a game world. It is quite a bit different, and I hope you'll stick with me and see what those differences are, because overall, this is one of my favorite in that genre so far. So the story follows our main character, who eventually becomes known as Ainz. He is a player of an sort of multiplayer virtual reality type MMO called Yggdrasil. And in the final days, as the servers are about to be turned off, he decides that he's going to stay in the game until he's sort of force logged off when the game ends. But instead of being force logged off, he wakes up and realizes that he actually seems to be in the game world still, and that it's become real. Now, there's a lot of things that set this apart from, say, probably the two more famous ones that have been released in English, Sword Art Online and Log Horizon. I'm going to do some really minor spoilers on this book just so I can point out some of the differences, because they play a major factor in making this book work. So, first of all, let's talk about the main character, Ainz. Now, one of the things that really sets him apart is that he's a bit older than a lot of our main characters in, a lot of other light novels in general, but specifically Sword Art Online. He's actually an older, full-time worker who plays this game as sort of a way to escape the mundanity of his day-to-day. So right away, his motivation for playing the game is quite a bit different. He is sort of has a different way of thinking about things because he is sort of an older working person. And the other thing about this is that this book starts with Yggdrasil being shut down. It's not like, say, Sword Art, where the game was about to go live, so there was all this excitement about the game starting. Or even Log Horizon, where, yes, it was a long-running game, but there was going to be a brand new update, and people were all logged on, excited for this new update and stuff. This book starts in a space full of melancholy and a little bit of like resentment and anger and such, as Ainz is watching this virtual world that's been sort of a source of social contact with other individuals that are like him coming to an end. There's sort of this idea of the anger that comes with losing something that you value, that sort of frustration and anger that you used to have this massive guild that was made up of 41 players, that you were all friends and you were all sort of driven and working together, and now most of them are gone. And you being that sort of last person that's held on to the game when everybody else has moved away. So right away, it's a different emotional space that this book starts to take place in. Second thing that happens is that when the book only focuses on Ainz, in fact, we're not even sure if anyone else has arrived in this game world outside of him. Everyone else appears to be NPCs. So, again, it's a very different thing because we have a singular character who's on a singular journey, who only has himself really to rely on in terms of trying to figure out how to operate in this world and how to survive. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that the companions that he has in this world, the people he's going to have to rely on, are former non-playing characters who were pretty much just automatons that responded to very specific verbal commands. Now, each of them was created by his former guildmates, and there was a massive, like his guildmates, because they were older and because they were really into this, they created these big, long sort of stories about these characters and their personalities and everything else. But even Ainz doesn't really know all of those things. He has some general ideas. So now, suddenly, he finds these non-player characters alive. He finds them with different characteristics. And he has this insecurity all of a sudden that these are now real people that I'm dealing with. And they're looking at me to be their leader, and I have to earn their trust, and I have to maintain their trust, because they're now capable of betraying me, and I'm alone in this, and what happens if I get betrayed? The other thing that sets, I think, this apart is that it truly becomes reality. So, like, even Ainz himself realizes that there are changes in his own personality, in how he views things, because he is, in a sense, actually becoming the the very character that he played. And so there's a little bit of sort of like a psychological element to this too, that not only is he trying to adjust to this new world and the new realities of this world, but he has this sort of internal struggle too about, why am I acting this way? Why do I, why is it suddenly I'm acting in a way that's different than what I would have at any other time? And it's also fun because since he is now dealing with these non-player characters and trying to earn their trust and everything, he's actually using lessons learned in the business world and saying things like, oh, I wish my managers had been like this, or the most effective managers I had ever had did this, so this is how now I'm going to act. And for someone who, especially for me, someone who's a bit of an older fan and does have a 9-to-5 type job, who works in an office and has bosses and coworkers and everything else, and who does play video games to escape from some of that and as a bit of a stress reliever, I really plugged into this. Like, I really got this book. It really spoke to me as far as my place in life. There's enough cool sort of magic and violence and fantasy elements that I think that it will definitely appeal to a broad range of people, but as an older fan who is sort of living kind of like this, it really, I just connected with this probably a little bit more than I have with a lot of other light novels that I've read. Another thing that I would say sets this apart is that it is becoming a reality. Like, this is now set in a real fantasy world. This could have been just a fantasy novel, but it adds sort of just a nice little element to it, that the main character is out of his element and doesn't really know how the world operates and is trying to sort of figure out why some things seem different and why some things are similar. It's that he now has equipment that he knows how it used to work as a game, but now he's got to try and figure out how it works in a real type world setting. So it makes this a lot more interesting than just sort of a straight ahead fantasy novel about a overlord character, because you get all of this sort of internal conflict and this doubt and everything else, because he realizes that in a way he's masquerading as this character, but if he wants to survive, he has to find a way to become this character. It doesn't hurt either that it kind of takes the point of view of a character who used to play as a villain, whose guild was essentially made up of characters who had chosen to play as monsters and demons and decided to actually play the game as monsters and demons and terrorize sort of the humanoids and everything else. And so we have that element too, where it's like, do I pursue that line? Like, do I become that person even more so now that I'm in some other world? Or do I play a hero? Or where do I sit in this hierarchy of good, bad, evil, or gray area? So that adds sort of an interesting dimension to it as well. In short, I guess what I'm saying is that what makes this book really enjoyable is we have a main character who is multi-dimensional. Now, a lot of the characters that surround him, the NPCs, they have very specific character traits, and I wouldn't say they're as fleshed out in this volume. This volume is very much all about Ainz and about who he is and about who he's becoming, and it's his exploration of this world. This volume is very much an introduction volume. It doesn't have like a very clear-cut antagonist in this. It is really about this guy, initially about his sorrow about losing this game, and then about how the hell do I survive now, and how do I move forward now that I'm in this new situation. So this is a big setup book. This introduces us to our characters. It introduces us a little bit to the world, but a very sort of narrow view of the world because, Ainz is being cautious right from the get-go. So this book is a huge introduction. If you're reading this book thinking that you're going to get some really sort of clear-cut beginning, middle, end, there's an antagonist that's going to be fought and everything else, that doesn't really happen. You'll probably be a little bit disappointed by this first volume. If you're looking at this as the first stage of a much bigger story, then I think you'll probably be a little less disappointed by it. In general, I really like this. I thought that pacing-wise, it was a lot better paced than, say, the first volume of Log Horizon. The fact that we're focusing on only one main character who is an interesting character sets it apart from, say, Sword Art Online. Sorry, but let's face it, Kirito, not the most dimensional character we've ever met in light novels. Overlord, I really enjoyed it. I think it's probably my favorite of this genre that's been released officially in English so far. I can see why a lot of people were big fans of the anime. I haven't watched it yet myself. I was waiting until I could start reading the light novels. So far, Overlord Volume 1, really enjoyed it. Far more multi-dimensional main character, a world that presents itself with a lot of possibilities, and enough, I would say, mystery and questioning of what's happened, even more so than in some of the other stories that are similar to this, that I think it's going to be a really good hook and is going to carry this series a long way. So those are my thoughts on the light novel Overlord Volume Number 1. So in my next light novel review video, I will be reviewing another Volume Number 1, which is going to be Bakano, which is by the author of Durarara. So join me in that video for my review of this one. You can click on subscribe either above my head or in the link down in the description so you can keep up with all my future light novel reviews. As well, I've got links over here to my other light novel reviews, my manga reviews, and as well, I don't just like to read books, I like to write them, so I've got a link to those down in the bottom as well. Thanks very much for watching the video. I hope to see you in my next one. Until then, bye-bye for now.